I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Hey everyone! As I prepare for the premiere of my one-woman show, Cartwheel, at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival this August, I've been thinking about the relationship between tragedy and comedy. I'm sure you know that old saying, tragedy plus time equals comedy. You can see it play out in many comedy specials. Sarah Silverman's latest Someone You Love is about the death of her parents. Mike Birbiglia's Old Man and the Pool is all about mortality. Jenna Friedman's Motherfucker, Hannah Gadsby's Nanette, Patton Oswalt's Annihilation. Sometimes you don't even need time. One of my favorite comedy sets ever is Tig Notaro's Hello, I Have Cancer, recorded shortly after she got her breast cancer diagnosis. From my own perspective, and from those of the comedians I've befriended, my venture into comedy is a no-brainer. Whitney Cummings, who gave me my first big comedy opportunity on The Roast of Whitney Cummings, recorded at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, said this when asked about why I was doing comedy. Amanda has been through such extreme trauma, and when it comes to comedy, trauma is like steroids in sports. Usually you have to have childhood trauma to grow up to be a funny comic. But Amanda's adult trauma of being adjacent to a horror, then being crucified in the press for a crime she didn't commit, no surprise she is able to sublimate her pain and non-consensual notoriety into hilarity. Even if you don't want to believe women, fine, we are used to it. But it's your loss if you don't come laugh at one. At a time when pity seems to be the new currency, she refuses to be a victim, and instead hilariously picks up the pieces of her past and builds a sparkly and hilarious mosaic. I'm lucky to have the champions like Whitney in this moment, because to a lot of people, especially in the media, I'm still tragedy girl. And the message I get is that the only respectful thing I can do is be silent. Those questions and that skepticism about my leap into the deep end of comedy are coming at me as I give interviews ahead of the debut of Cartwheel. My show speaks for itself, and in it, I walk that fine line between tragedy and comedy. I'll have plenty more to say on the subject in interviews and perhaps future essays. For now, I want to offer you something I recorded for a series called Resilience for the Waking Up meditation app. There are 20 total episodes where I get into everything I've learned about persevering through hardship, reframing the stories we tell about ourselves, mindfulness, stoicism, humor, all of it. Since I'm about to go stand on a stage in Edinburgh and try to make a room full of strangers laugh about the worst thing that ever happened to me and its impact on me as a mother, I thought it made sense to share the episode from that series called Humor as Catharsis. It's about why finding humor in tragedy is more than a coping mechanism. It's a survival skill, and a big part of how I've approached building this show. If you like what you hear, the full Resilience series is available on Waking Up. Just visit wakingup.com/Amanda Knox. I'll drop the link in the show notes as well. Here it is, Humor as Catharsis. I don't often encounter someone who is cruel to me in person. In fact, I somewhat pride myself on the fact that if a person meets me in real life, whatever they may have thought about me before, they come around to seeing me as the person I really am. Negativity usually comes at me from a distance. The tabloids throw my name in a headline and disparage me for clicks. Haters I've never met release their rage into the comments section. Killer, slut, I hope your baby dies. I delete and block like a game of whack-a-mole. I've been turned into a blood-splattered Halloween costume. I've been the subject of a David Letterman top 10 list. Bill Hader impersonated me on SNL. None of these jokes were thoughtful or kind. But they were also very distant from me, interacting with the funhouse mirror version of Amanda Knox. But sometimes the jokes hit very close to home, like the time I found myself at a comedy club for my sister's birthday. The opening comic was a local, and when he took the stage, I felt a glimmer of recognition. Where did I know him from? A few jokes in, he said, "Have you ever been in a room with a famous person and didn't realize it?" the back of my neck started tingling. Then I remembered. A few months prior, two comics had interviewed my then boyfriend Chris for their podcast. Chris is a poet and novelist, and they chatted about literature and comedy. I tagged along to the recording session and sat quietly in the corner working on a piece of embroidery. At the end of the interview, one of the comics took Chris down the hall to the restroom, and I chatted with the other comic for a few minutes about video games. He didn't seem to recognize me. To him, I was just the girlfriend. When Chris returned, we packed up and left. It wasn't an impactful moment, but it was pleasant enough. A friendly bit of small talk. The kind of thing I don't get to enjoy when the conversation veers into, "Holy hell, you were convicted of what?" I probably would have forgotten all about it, but the comic on stage certainly hadn't. Afterwards, my buddy says, "Dude, you didn't recognize her? That was Amanda Knox." At this point, my three sisters turned to me and my ghost white face. We were the one table in the room that had fallen silent. I'm like, "You left me in a room with Amanda Knox? She had knitting needles. She could have killed me. That's like leaving me in a room with OJ." I sat there paralyzed until the end of his set, trying to get control of my breath and keep from exploding in sobs. Chris and I left before the headliner. I eventually calmed down and spent the next few hours trying to figure out why his joke had bothered me so much. How many times, I wondered, had he told the joke before? How many open mics in my own hometown had he used to hone his wording? I was sad more than anything else. What this episode revealed was that I was wrong to assume that a pleasant face-to-face interaction would mute the Norman Bates "reet, reet, reet" soundtrack playing in people's heads whenever they heard my name. I also knew this wouldn't be the last time the worst experience of my life would be the butt of someone's joke. I'd never escape being a card against humanity, or an option in a bar game of bang, marry, kill. Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, or Amanda Knox. Repeatedly receiving a stick in the eye has not turned me into a stick in the mud, though. On the contrary, it reinforced how important comedy is as a survival skill, a source of catharsis. Gallows humor is not just a distraction from despair, or a counterpoint to the seemingly endless process of sifting through trauma. Finding humor in tragedy allows us to lean into the absurdity of the human condition. It spurs us to question the expectations we've built into the story of our lives. It allows us to reframe our misfortunes and regain our sense of agency. I've made my own attempts at transforming my trauma into humor. In the tense final hours of the Biden v. Trump election in 2020, I tweeted, "Whatever happens, the next 4 years can't be as bad as that 4-year study abroad I did in Italy, right?" Tens of thousands of people liked it, but plenty of others commented back, "Please delete this for your own dignity. This is foul. You absolute ghoul." It happened when I commented on a viral story about a girl who'd written about how much she hated her study abroad experience in Florence. "Girl, what are you talking about? Studying abroad is awesome," I tweeted. Again, thousands found it funny, but plenty called me a monster. My joke was twofold. I was gently poking fun in a have some perspective kind of way, but I was also being genuine. Studying abroad is awesome. And after everything I've been through, I will still encourage my own daughter to study abroad one day. But I understand why these people were upset. They associate my identity with Meredith's murder, so they assume I'm making a joke at Meredith's expense. They don't recognize that the object of my jokes are my own experiences, the 4 years I endured in prison for a crime I didn't commit, and how I've been globally vilified for over a decade. I'm very careful to make that distinction precisely because I know what it feels like for someone to be flippant about the worst experience of my life. It's no accident that many comedians have known serious loss. Comedy allows us to take ownership of what's been taken from us and to give it a meaning other than crushing despair. There's a catharsis that comes from expecting a jolt of pain, but finding a pleasant tickle. And sharing that laughter with others is even more cathartic. You can also find catharsis through shared vulnerability, of course. It's also not an accident that, at their extremes, laughter and sobbing feel quite similar. Both are forms of release. But laughter is a gift in a way that raw suffering isn't. It's like hope. It's a choice to believe that the terrible things that befall us don't have to be such downers. No matter how bad life gets, there is always room for laughter. Unless you're choking on something, then Heimlich first, laughter second. As a kid, I used to wonder why statues of the Buddha often showed him smiling or even laughing. Today, I recognize that truly accepting the circumstances of your life can be a kind of ecstasy. Recognizing how laughably parochial your self-story is, such a tiny sliver of the human experience, is both a relief and a joy. And at the same time, recognizing how your own personal pain is universal, a part of the totality of everything, is deeply comforting. You see this with people on psychedelics. My husband Chris, on an ego-dissolving dose of mushrooms, once started laughing hysterically as he repeated, "I'm everything! I'm everything!" The best jokes reveal something true about life. They offer a perspective shift that we can't get anywhere else. They impart joy. As Alan Watts said, to spread joy, you need to have joy. To impart delight, you need to be more or less delightful. Even when comedians self-deprecate, there's a kindness buried there, an acknowledgement that we're all struggling, we're all facing self-doubt. And so the comedian who rips into herself acts as a martyr by becoming the butt of her own jokes, letting the audience know it's okay. Life is hard, and we're all in this together. Humor is an essential tool for helping us reconcile the utter seriousness of life with its absolute frivolity. My husband Chris reminds me of what Robert Frost said of poetry, that it is play for mortal stakes. Pro tip, marry a poet. Play for mortal stakes is also a fine definition of comedy and of life. It's easy to forget play as we grow into our adult preoccupations. Who has time for charades when your tax return is overdue? But we ignore play at our own peril. That's the whole premise of Peter Pan. When tragedy strikes, or when the accumulating burdens of life start dragging us down, comedy is a buoy pulling us up. We should all hope to be as resilient as an inflatable clown punching bag, forever smiling as we bop back up. That's Humor as Catharsis from my Resilience series on waking up. If that resonated with you, there are 19 more episodes covering everything from narrative identity to nonviolent communication. You can find the full series at wakingup.com/Amanda Knox. The link is in the show notes.